Welcome to this week's Agent Mindset topics. We're going to start off with psychology of negotiating contracts. And I think this in today's world is a great topic because it takes a lot to, in twofolds. One, to work with our buyers and kind of work through the needs and wants of the contract and what's important. And then also when working with an agent on the other side of things on presenting your contract and making it the most appealing contract to them. So, let's talk about, what are some of the tips and tricks you guys are doing right now when it comes to first writing a contract for your buyer, to make sure it's you're putting your best foot forward in this world.
Not everybody wants.
Not everybody
at once.
Well, I always look at it like every transaction is different and each situation. So I always do as much recon as possible with the listing agent and then talk to my buyers about the different strategies that we can employ. So, sometimes an escalation clause makes a lot of sense. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes if we can, shorten contingencies or remove contingencies, and we just kind of take it on a case by case basis, and even house by house of the same client, maybe they're comfortable removing an appraisal or inspection on one property, but on another, probably not after I run comps. So that's kind of how I approach it, is just really, I look at the whole picture, like what are the tangibles and then what are the intangibles, and how can we, like when talking to a client, like knowing like what's your absolute, best offer you can put forward, because number one, you don't know if you're even going to get a counter in some of these multiple situations. You just have to go super strong if you really want it. And then, just figuring out, okay, where can we add in a little bit, sweeten the pot on those sellers, closing costs? Where can we, if we can shorten our inspections from, the standard, our contract default is 17 days, which I think is crazy long. Hey, Janice. And then, seeing if we can at least shorten it to 10 or 7. And I've got good relationships with my inspectors, so I know I can call them up and say, hey, I got to get squeezed in. So that's my approach.
And let me ask a quick question, because I'm curious, when you talk about putting your best foot forward and writing the strongest offer possible, how do you get a buyer to buy into that?
Sometimes, well, I find it's always important to really talk to them all the time about what's happening in the market. And so when we go to see properties, if I've got time beforehand, if I know like this is a really strong option for them, this is something they might want to write on, I'm going to look at comps ahead of time. I'm going to look and see, how many, that one that sold down the street, did it have multiple offers? That kind of thing. So I can really prepare them mentally. And as, and for us, our market just turned, it just shifted like 3 to 4 weeks ago from being, a market where a buyer could, write at or below list price and have a chance. And now we're up against multiple offers again. And so helping them come along with you and that mindset to show them like, we're back where we were. We have to really look at what's happening currently, and just, it's a lot of conversations and a lot of talking. And sometimes it's letting them learn by failure and having them lose out on a house or two before they get comfortable with, okay, yeah, we're going to need to remove that. I haven't gotten to the point where we're removing appraisal contingencies on anything I've written, but it's heading in that direction. And so, sometimes it just takes a buyer some time to get comfortable with that notion.
Now, is that something you asked? Is that something you asked them too? Like, I've had buyers that in my consultation, I've uncovered that, they're going to be patient enough. have zero interest in really getting into bidding wars. So they're like, hey, if we get into a situation where we may not want to place the offer. Is that a conversation that comes up with your buyers?
Not really. Okay. I think it's kind of depends on the house too. Like if, right now the buyers I'm working with are really in it. And I'm pretty blunt with them. Like I just had a buyer consult over the weekend and I sat down with them and they're first time home buyers. And I just said, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Like it just got tough and you're looking at the price point that everybody is. Like they're at the most competitive entry level price point. I said, but I'm here to throw elbows for you and I'm going to fight really hard. And so if you can muster up the grit and perseverance to battle through this, I'm going to help you through that. And I'm going to show, and it might be that we're going to write more than one offer. We might write more than 4 offers, but we're going to get you something. It's just, it just takes a little more work right now in this market. And, I think that just having those conversations and just being really upfront about what the market's doing and what they need to do, finding those pain points for them. They need a house. They don't want to rent anymore. This is what we have to do. And, sometimes the bidding war isn't worth it. And I'll tell them like, that just went way out of our league. It's not going to appraise it, beyond. We can, make that decision as we go. But if I think we've got a shot, I'm going to fight for them.
Yeah, I think from the buyer side of the house, you have to definitely do your research. You have to do your own comps. That's a must. That helps you with the psychology end of it too. And being able to confidently say, if this goes over this amount, I would be concerned and here's why. And I had a few of those, a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, where I'm like, guys, like if this market shifts at all and you try to sell this house in the next 5 years, you're screwed. Mm-hmm. Just kind of being able to confidently say that, or at least enough to say, you could really put yourself in a situation here. Like, are you certain you're going to keep this thing for 10 plus years? And that's just kind of getting into, like I said, the psyche of your buyer, let alone the listing agent or the other agent you're negotiating against. So we should we should flip the tables too. Like there's a psychology of negotiating contracts from the seller side too. So what are some things you guys do there?
Before we jump into sellers, Brad, I want to point out one thing real quick, and I think this is very important in today's market. And Valerie said it very well. Is she's very blunt and straight, upfront and honest with people. I think if we sugarcoat things for our buyers and sellers at any point in time, it just could potentially put a bad taste in their mouth because then they feel like they're being bullshitted, right? We all, we're doing this to make a living, but at the same time, we're building that relationship of getting them to like us, trust us, and know us. And if we're sugarcoating stuff, they're not going to like us and they're not really going to get to know us because they're going to see through the BS. So Valerie, I commend you for doing that. It's tough at times, right? It's tough to have that conversation and keep people engaged in that sense. So nice job with that. Sorry, Brad, I didn't want to cut you off. I just wanted to point that out.
I just want to make sure we have the buyer or the other side of the transaction. And then I think there's a third angle that we can also talk about, which is the psychology between dealing with 8 different agents. Mm-hmm. Janice, you probably not been with me long enough, but we did a whole thing on the three selling styles of agents. Do you remember what the 3 are, Valerie?
I don't. I know that I'm the most passive type.
Yeah, there was the collaborative. They all started with C. The combative, the collaborative, and the cooperative. Yeah, so we'll get into that in a second. But let's take seller side first. So same thing. I'll start with this as far as when you list a house. One of the things you talk to the seller about is negotiations. And if I feel like their home has a potential of I guess I based on the strategy. If I feel like we're pricing it and I feel like there's going to be multiple offers, I want to talk to them about what they're looking for and what I'm looking for as far as with the offers. And I start explaining things of like how just because an offer had maybe more money doesn't necessarily make it the best offer. So those are things I start doing on that perspective. And then I want to understand from the buyer side, okay, outside of price, what are some things that are important to you? We've had several in this case that have decided to put their home in the market, not having a new home found. So allowing post-closing occupancy. That's been important, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, I like to, with the client, get into the understanding of outside of course, price, what are those things that are important? I think those are great things to cover, of course, during your listing appointment, or at least when the house is getting ready to go live. Okay, at any point at this point, we could potentially get offer or offers. How, what are some important things to you? That's what I would do first.
So, and what about, and before we go into your 3 different types of agents, because I've dealt with all 3 just this weekend, what about, working, and I guess it's partially working with the agents out there, but what about like the seller, and how are you going about, once you know their pain points, convincing them which is their best offer based on maybe not being the highest dollar to offer? How do you get past that? Because I truly believe homeowners, no matter what, look at what they're going to pocket first, and not necessarily what is potentially going to be the easiest, smoothest transaction. Especially if they have a ton of contingencies in there, and that they're probably just going to shortchange you in that when it comes down to it.
You kind of answered your question with my answer with what you just said. One of the things I do is I want to get them the offer that's the best price, and is the most likely to close and close smoothly. So I guess it kind of be a 3-part thing. Best price, actually closes as smooth as possible. So that's the other thing I look at with offers is this going to be a smooth transaction? And that was probably, I've had situations for you, Vince, you would know this, Ridgeway this year. We actually took the highest actually fit the other criteria. You had highest price by 10 grand, no inspection. Others had no inspections, no well and septic inspection, which is awesome. And so basically no inspections, period. And there wasn't even an appraisal contingency, even though there was financing. So it was like super clean across the board. That one happened to. I had one a few years ago where, and this is where you got to understand too, like where you're pricing it to the market and appraisal purposes. I had a small house that we listed for, I think we listed for 190. We had 195 offers. We had 200 offers. One of the 195 offers, because I knew we were getting to the limit of where it would appraise at. So we looked at, I told the sellers, I'm like, well, these are $5,000 more. However, we're going to be flirting with the finance contingency. So here's the other clean things I like about this offer that's at 195. There are actually 2 at 195. And we took the cleanest one in other aspects. I can't remember what they all were. It was a couple years ago. But so I always look at, like I said, to summarize again, this, yes, best price, but also if you can't even get the best price, the smooth and actual close are just as important, if not more. I'd rather every seller would most likely take less money, a little bit less money to have it actually close, right?
Yep. Well, and to probably eliminate the headache of, them asking, the buyers asking for the price to be dropped throughout the process for something.
Exactly.
Now a question for everybody, because I'm curious on what you guys do for this. When you're submitting an offer to another agent, and this is kind of ties into like our 3 types of agents. When you're submitting an offer to another agent, obviously you have, if it's the PDF file or whatever you're sending over, do you send a synopsis of your offer? And then do you also give like why you as an agent will help close this deal? Does that make sense?
Depends.
Depends on what?
That's a little bit of a segue into the agent type. So if there's multiple offers, I'm giving that listing agent as much information and pitching myself, pitching my client in a number of different ways. So yes, I'm doing the summary email every time, maybe even asking the client to write a letter. They're a crapshoot whether those letters work, right? But if you got a chance of them working, yeah, because you have clients ask, should I write a letter? Yeah, it won't hurt. You telling the client how much you love their house for whatever reason, it's not going to hurt it. You might touch it. You might touch a chord, right? But if there's no other offers, no, I'm going to give them the least amount because that's my negotiation style, and I morph. So I'm probably mostly, once we get into these styles, and once we define them, if you guys aren't familiar with definitions and those that know me, I'm very much cooperative, but I also go combative at times. I'm never cooperative, really, or
collaborative.
I'm collaborative and I'm combative. I'm very rarely cooperative.
Not cooperative.
I'm cooperative at the end to get the deal closed, like with little shit. Like I just was that way. But the first phase, I'm never cooperative. I'm collaborative or because collaborative is just a negotiation style in my opinion. But we'll get into that further. But it just depends as far as on the offer side. Yeah, if I want to be as closed door as possible because I don't want to give away what we potentially offer on the property.
Well, not necessarily I'm not asking like what you could go up to, but more of, details of the offer in the email. So
no, just read it.
You don't even do that.
Just read it. You figure it out.
Okay. What about you, Janice or Valerie? How do you guys present your offers to other agents?
Janice, do you want to go? I feel like I've hogged
Sure. It like Brad said, it depends on the actual situation. If it's multiple offers, I am presenting it with the highlights of the contract or the offer and in the email ahead of time so that I know they aren't missing anything. Because sometimes when you get in the multiple offer situation, I think agents become overwhelmed and some contracts, things get hidden in them and might get overlooked. So I try to make sure and give them the summary and point out any specific highlights of things that I think are going to stand out in that offer. Now, if it's I'm just sending over an offer, they can read it themselves and figure it out. If it's not a multiple offer situation, they should be doing that anyways, but that doesn't always happen. I actually just had an agent on one of my listings that just went under contract. She literally contacted me and asked me what her contract said. And I'm like, check your contract. It's your contract. I'll have to go through and reread it again. And I don't have it right in front of me. And then she's like, oh, I called the title company and they said yes. So, but anyways, no, I'm not helping them any more than I have to, unless it's a multiple offer situation. I need to put my client in the best light. I did just get a buyer under contract a few weeks ago against a cash offer because we were able to offer other incentives such as extended close date and extended possession because the seller had not found properties and to help or a place to move yet. That way they could get a place, get under contract, get closed, and move in their time frame. So that's, just trying to find out what's going to work best for the seller to make it as painless for them to get a contract accepted.
So, and you did that, you found that out because you did your due diligence by reaching out to the selling agent or listing agent.
Yes.
No, that's good. And you knew there was multiple offers on the table ahead of time, or you kind of had a feeling just based on price point and.
Well, based on the price point, I did, I let my buyer know, hey, this is priced appropriately. They did come in a little lower. And before, when the other agent was actually presenting the offer, another offer came in from a neighbor's son or whatever that was cash. And they did come back and say, hey, did your client want to make any changes? That's another thing I've kind of started doing. Instead of saying highest and best, I've gone back and said, hey, there is another offer, just so you're aware. Does your client want to make any changes? And that way I feel that helps with the buyers that don't want to make adjustments or don't want to be in a bidding war. Just, hey, there is another offer. Do you want to make any changes before we present? Just to give them the opportunity.
Yeah, I like that strategy.
I like that approach.
Good, Ben.
I was going to say, I think that it's beneficial to both parties, because you can ultimately garner, a higher offer for your seller, but it gives buyers an opportunity if they do have a little more that they can dig into and put towards the offer. They really want that house. There you go.
And again, it's not always monetary. It might be some other type of incentive, such as possession or a closing date. Maybe they could close a little sooner. They would have liked to make it longer, but they might want to change it to a sooner close date to try and make it more enticing for the seller, or change an inspection or something like that. So just another way I've been trying to look at it. So not to make buyers feel so targeted. Because I think a lot of buyers do feel that way nowadays.
Yeah, and I think too, from when we say highest and best, we like the first thought in every buyer's mind is I have to put more money forward, right? They want more money from me. And to your guys' point, it's not that. It's maybe changing, like Val said earlier, maybe it's changing your inspection time frame for you guys 17 days. That is nuts.
It's crazy long.
In Illinois, they have to have their inspection done in 5 days. That is crazy.
We're 14 days.
You guys are 14, yeah. That's a long time of waiting.
Another thing buyers are doing in our area are inspections for informational purposes only. They can still back out of the contract based on those inspections, but they're saying they aren't going to ask the seller for repairs. That they're doing that to protect themselves, but they aren't going to ask them for repairs. Now, if something comes up big, of course we could let them know, hey, this is, and we aren't able to do that, to see if they want to take that on before we release from the contract.
Yeah, Illinois is the same way. They have that option to do it as is, but still do an inspection for informational purposes, and then could still back out if there's something major. So no.
Or negotiate price too, which, by the way, in regard to as is, because a lot of clients get freaked out, especially on the buyer side, on what they think as is means. It's just as is. As is really is just not going to do any repairs. Just let's negotiate it. Let's negotiate initial price. If something comes up in the inspection, I'm probably going to throw money at it. I'm just not going to do any repairs. People get freaked out. They think like as is, like it's take it or leave it. Once you make the offer, the inspection may or may not be for informational purposes. I've written it several different ways. I've sold 3 of my last 4 houses as is. Just what I said. Just as is, meaning I said, I'm not going to do more repairs than anything I've committed to already. If something comes up with the inspection, I'm just telling you right now, don't ask me to fix it. You can negotiate a credit or a price reduction if you want, but I'm not doing any work. That's my stance. So that's another thing with the buyers. You have to explain, like, don't let me get freaked out by as is. Like, oh no, like, what do we do now? Well, this is what this means. So. Anybody else on that topic? Or that portion of the topic? This is the long topic today. Okay. Agent styles. This is a fun one because, so Janice, what are you naturally?
I'm collaborative, but I'm also cooperative. I'm not normally combative. I can get combative if I'm pushed too far, but not normally.
Okay. So, okay. Valerie, which style or styles are you mostly?
I think I align with Janice in that way too. I come into a negotiation, trying to get what's best for my client, but in a way that preserves the relationship that I'm working within. So I try not to be combative. I'm also I'm probably not the strongest negotiator. Like I'm not, and not just in real estate, but like, I'm not the person who's gonna go back and ask for more money off of a bid or something. Like that's just, I don't know. It's something I don't generally do, and I don't know if that's a personality trait or male versus female or how, but definitely something I should work on.
I'm going to pause for a second before I ask Vince. So I think it's important we do understand the definitions of them. So by typical definition, this is an exact science, but cooperative is usually that agent that they don't want anyone ever mad at them. They don't want the listing, the other agent mad at them. They don't want their client mad at them. They usually don't like to deliver bad news, whether it's an offer or it's a contract. That's the definition of cooperative. Collaborative is like, I probably, and I'll just go ahead and say mine, I probably default to this the most often because this is the one that wants to like, hey, okay, you give this, I will give this. It usually lends itself to the whole verbal negotiating, which I prefer to do verbal negotiations. I wish we could just negotiate the dang thing verbally. And when you're one-on-one, I get it. If there's multiples, you got it in writing because then you know what you're doing. Then the listing agent knows what's all laid out. But after that initial offer, if it's one-on-one, it's a verbal negotiation. Like, all right, well, we can do this. This will do this. What will this work for you? This will work for us. And then there's the combative. They're the ones that they hold everything tight. They don't want to give you any information. You even saw it. I don't agree with this. This is where I think as a listing agent, when everything was, I told a couple agents this. They didn't like me for saying it to them, but whatever. I don't care. When everything was getting multiple offers, I think combative agents would, a lot of times I dealt with, weren't doing their client justice. Because they weren't giving information. Like they would, like if I had that situation, I would say, all right, hey, yes, price is important, but by the way, especially in the instances of like post-closing occupancy, or could be like, something with inspections, I would tell them, hey, outside of price, these are things that are important to my client. So if you want to have a good offer, please take these things into consideration. That does your client a justice. I don't think some of these agents wouldn't give you shit, and they weren't bringing out the best potential offers, I don't think, with the other agents. So
yeah,
I'd say to me, the one that's probably the ones that goes both ways, and that whole give and take, collaborative is a great style. I think there's a need to go, like Valor or Janice mentioned it, and I kind of do the same thing. Like if it's a one-on-one, okay, now I can hold a little bit closer. Then I'm good. That's my combative style at that point. So,
yeah. When it
Vince,
comes
what's your
to
style?
I think if I'm a listing agent and I'm just getting the one offer, or if I have one offer and I'm getting a second one and I'm leveraging those offers against each other, then it's a totally different. I think it's a totally different negotiating tactic and style than when it's a multiple situation. I'm talking to multiple agents and trying to get them to just come to the table with, something really good, and also giving them enough information so they can be competitive. And, like I said, that serves everybody.
Yeah. So, and I would say, to finish up mine, like with my combative, it's usually only also during the negotiation. So just run a contract. The goal is to get to the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
I think it helps both agents if you go back to being collaborative through the inspections. Hey guys, this is super important to my buyer that these things are taken care of. They don't want to deal with this. Seller could be like, all right, well, that's not a problem. We'll take care of that. But boy, they really don't want to mess with this. Is there something we can do there? I like to definitely go collaborative, because that's at that point, everybody should be working together the best you can to get the deal to the finish line. Because if you've had an offer and you've got to accept an offer, everybody's got at that point what? We have a buyer who wants to buy the home, a seller wants to sell the home,
Yeah.
So, and again, I think the cooperative agents have to be careful that they're, again, giving away too much during that inspection stuff, or not being tough enough. And the combative ones, they could just be complete pricks, and then you could just end up saying screw this shit, and your clients end up getting the brunt of that, right? Well, they just won't do anything. Well, fuck them. Let's go buy another one. So,
yep.
All right, Vince, what do you think your style is, by the way?
I would say I'm a little bit of collaborative and cooperative at the same time. Combative, it just depends on the agent I'm working with. If I got an agent, and it could even be in multiple offers, if they're being a complete ass, I'm going to give it right back to them. Like, I'm not going to let them think that they could push me over just because, maybe my offer was a little bit less, or, things were a little bit different on our side. But, and I could say firsthand, I've dealt with that a little bit just this weekend. I dealt with all three agents. I had a cooperative agent that went out of her way to get into the house, to show us a house today. Not today, but this weekend. I had a combative agent that was a complete ass and would not let me get into the house during the scheduled, this was the scheduled block of time in the showing time. And they sent me a message, said, no, you can't go see it then. Can you see it Friday instead of Saturday at 4? I'm like, no, my client works. He can't do that. Well, then you're SOL. And I'm like, well, fuck you then. Sorry, pardon my French. It just really irritated the crap out of me this weekend. And combative, I actually have a seller or a buyer right now that I've been a little combative with, just because they just don't listen. And it's really hard. I have found that it's been really hard for me to play Mr. Nice Guy and try to be, collaborative, cooperative with them when they're not hearing everything. And I finally have to be like, no, we've talked about this. This is what I need. This is when we're doing it. This is the deadline. And usually it's the wife that kind of has to reel him back in and be like, no, we've already gone over this. But I found that I've had to kind of stop sugarcoating it for him, because he's a little lost out there. And Brad knows who I'm talking about. Brad's like, I bet you'll be excited when that closing day comes. It's been a little bit of a nightmare.
I called a combative agent out on his bullshit this week. So he had a listing. I was trying to set up a showing, and I sent in the request through showing time because it showed up on MLS that it was available for showing time. And, if the agent doesn't want to use showing time, they can disable it, and then you don't get the button. So the button was there. I click on it to schedule it, and I don't get a response. So a few hours later, I text him. I'm like, hey, is it, can you confirm this appointment? And he texted back, call me. So I'm like, oh, that's demanding. Okay. So I call him all off the bat. My guard is up because, usually be like, hey, give me a call, or let's, whatever, something friendly. He starts yelling at me. Did you even read the showing instructions? It's call first, lockbox. That means you call me and then you go to the lockbox. the lockbox is on the house, but first you have to call me. Did you even read it? And he like went off. And I was like, it was on showing time. I'm scheduling a bunch of, like, nobody reads down to the little itty bitty, like, if you put it in private remarks, then people read it. But what is, anyway, this whole, like, there's this whole thing anyway. So I get off the phone with him and I didn't really respond back, but I stewed about it for a few minutes and I texted him back. I'm like, I don't appreciate the way you talk to me. And you really should tone down your attitude a bit with people that you might be doing business with. You never know who your next deal is gonna be with. And he replied back and he's like, he said, noted. I just got a lot of calls or a lot of texts from that property and nobody's reading the instructions. I'm like,
well, I think you said, or maybe didn't to him, I would just said too, like, if you can disable the showing time access.
I did put that in the text too. I said, if you don't want agents
Yeah.
using showing time, you can disable it.
Because it is annoying, like certain stuff, like, we have a form that asks all the typical questions buyers ask. I'll start getting calls asking those questions. But the cool thing is I can just be really calm and go ahead and say, see documents.
Right. You don't have to be an asshole about it. You could just say, like, I mean, he didn't have to yell at me. He could have just said, yes, the house is available at 4:30 and moved on with his day.
Yeah. It's like I said, the combative ones, the problem is I think they watch too much $1 Million Listing or something, because they're like, you've seen the dramatic side of those shows. And if you just work together and you got a common goal, and if there's an offer being made, if you got a showing being made, you have a buyer that's interested potentially in the house, you have a seller that wants to sell. It's like,
get that buyer in the house.
Yeah. That's why I think like these guys trying to be freaking Ryan Serhant or Frederick Eklund are I think they just get their clients play. And don't get me wrong, I always say this all the time, those guys are real agents, they're top agents, and they're really freaking good at what they do. And I would love to have a quarter of their businesses. But the show is for drama. So it's like, stop trying to be a TV show and just be a person. And don't lead every conversation with another agent with how much you've sold in revenue last year. That irritates the shit out of me. Because I don't care. So, all right, I think we beat that topic to death. We're not getting any topics today. So, anybody else want to complain about agents? Okay, I got one more question. Who goes to realtor functions in their area?
Sometimes.
I don't. And why? Because I have several agents around here that I really like and I'm friends with, but I cannot stand the 80% that have to lead everything with how much volume they did. I don't care. Congratulations. So, all right. What's our next topic? We can move on, I think.
The power of teams. I found it for you, buddy.
Yeah, power of teams. So, who here? Well, I already know this answer. So, anybody have a team yet?
Not yet.
She's blacked out. Okay. Anybody besides me and Vince, which again, our team's small. We're in the 70 percentile category though, because 70% of teams nationwide are 4 people or less. And we, as of this week, actually are 4 people.
Yeah, I am not. I'm also not on a team. Sorry, I'm blacked out because I'm driving, but I'm sort of here.
Well, we appreciate you just showing up.
I try to show up. It's been a rough week, but you know.
It's Monday, Sarah.
Yeah, like I said.
Don't remind her. Don't remind her.
It's been a rough
week.
Okay,
sorry about that. Well, it's Thursday for you.
So let me ask, like, Valerie and Janice. I think you both said not yet. Sarah, you can listen if you want to throw in your 2 cents. Is building a team a goal of yours?
It is a goal of mine.
Is it
Janice? Yes.
What, Brad?
I'll let Janice answer first, then I'll ask the follow-up question.
I am looking at more of some sort of team, a SEAL team or whatever they call it, a small team, but not anything big eventually.
Okay. So you defined yours. Valerie, like you'd like doesn't have to be huge, a small SEAL team, which for those that don't know, SEALs is kind of like the Navy term for SEAL. It's every person, whether they're a producer or not, because there's support people, there's production people, there's management, depending on how big your team is. Everyone has a particular role that they excel at. So that's kind of like actually the SEAL team. There's definitions of 4 different style of teams. There's the family style team, there's the dominant agent team, there's the SEAL team, and I cannot remember the 4th one off the top of my head right now. Quickly, I'll just give you the ones I remember, for the 3 I remember. SEAL team, we just defined that. That's kind of like your ideal team. Like it functions probably most like a corporation. Okay. The family team is very good. It's usually what? It's kind of self-defined. It's usually made up of family members, husband, wife, father, sibling and parent, or their siblings, or whatever. There's a family dynamic. Negative side to a family team is when usually people and families go on vacation together. So if you're going on vacation, basically your team shuts down for the week, right? SEAL team is not typically. And the other one is the dominant agent style. Those are the ones where the lead agent gets all the press, their name's on all the signs, their deals are all closed under their name. That's great for them. They make an assload of money typically, but they churn through people quickly. There's no growth. They're really the epitome of, they're going to grab newer agents. Once those agents get kind of confident and on their own and get that growth, they're out the door. And they know that. That's their choice. But that to me is constant churning, and whereas a SEAL team, there might be opportunities for growth, depending on your size, So SEAL team is a strong one. That's sense. And Janice and I have had this conversation. It's one of the reasons my team used to be called Brewer and Associates. I won my name off of it because probably could have kept it since we live in Wisconsin. We got a bunch of breweries, but I didn't want to associate it, so I took my name off. So hence came up with Eagle Homes, and I gave Vincent the opportunity to come up with a new name, which we kept Eagle Homes for now. So, but anyway, so there you go. Sarah, do you want me on this? Nope. Back on mute. Nope. Okay.
So Valerie, what is your ideal team?
So interesting that you mentioned like these different types of teams, Brad, because in my brokerage, we have about 10 teams out of our 400 agents, and they all run the same structure, which is they've got a big producer, the major teams have, a high producer, and then a bunch of lower producing agents on the team who aspire to be that person. Mm-hmm. And the value proposition from those different teams varies, but there's not a whole lot going on outside of they're under this umbrella with a name of a well-known agent.
Their value proposition is typically, it's not much beyond this. The value proposition is they're great for new agents because there's a constant stream of leads.
No, not there's not a lot of leads given out in the teams I used to run the team.
That's the 4th style. Thank you, by the way. It's okay. Like the unorganized team. It's like really it's a bunch of individuals, but we kind of market ourselves as a team.
Yep. That's what my brokerage has a ton of.
Yep.
So we've got the couple, we've
here.
got like the husband and wife team or like the family team. We have a couple of small teams, but the majority of the teams in my brokerage operate in that way. Their value proposition is weak, their commission split is high, and they are constantly churning through agents, or they have agents on their teams that are just sucking up resources and not producing. So
yeah,
my broker has been pushing for me to start a team, and I've been, Brad, I've been kind of putting it off and kind of waiting till I can, I don't know, finally get some consistency in my life. But when I do, and I've thought a lot about it, I've been on a couple different teams. I've thought a lot about what I want my team to be, what I want my value proposition to be. And I want to be able to provide a structure in the team. So I like that SEAL team concept where everybody has a designated role. We don't have any teams in our office that operate that way. And my broker, has really pushed for that, for teams to redesign, but nobody wants to, because, it's hard once you're already set in your roles. You can't just say, okay, from now on, I'm just going to be a buyer's agent or, or do marketing. So I think from the get-go, that's kind of the direction I want to go. And then I already have been thinking about, my value props will be, I'm going to feed some leads. That's why I want to get to a point where I have enough consistent leads coming in that I can feed them to my team members. And then training and education and coaching to my team. So that will set me apart.
You're really trying to create a SEAL team. That's what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And SEAL teams, there's reasons for the others. I don't like to talk negatively about either one. Each one has their positives and negatives to them. Potentially even the SEAL team, I don't see a lot of negative to the SEAL team. Here's why. It's usually designed around total team success. It provides a purpose for the younger agent or the newer agent to get this. But there is usually, as the team grows, those people who have come along they tend to stay because there's new opportunities, either through increased pay or compensation or position, or both. Ideally, you make more money and you maybe get a higher position. Like I know a team out of Madison, Wisconsin here. I met the husband and wife team, but they have a SEAL team. They're 20 people strong. About half are producers, about half are support. So they're averaging a support person of some type. Like they literally have the husband and wife basically are like dual CEOs, CEOs, chief marketing officers. They have a director of operations. They have a director of marketing. And these are all support people that make great money. They must make pretty good volume, because I remember a couple of years ago, their Zillow bill was $30,000 a month. So if your Zillow bill is $30,000 a month, you got to be
something happening there.
You got to be cranking a pretty good volume, right?
Yeah.
So,
especially in Wisconsin.
Especially in Wisconsin, so you got to be cranking a pretty darn good volume. But anyway, that's the design of the SEAL team. The other ones aren't bad. Like I've talked to top agents that have these dominant teams where they just churn and burn people. They're like, but that's what I want. That's my style. Okay. I don't want that, because I don't know how they ever really get out of direct production. Because even if they get out of direct production, they're constantly training. Or they have to have someone who's constantly training, right? Because they just constantly have new people. I don't know. Vince and I are both looking to get out of direct production, sometime in the future. Like, I'd like to in the next 3 years. I don't think Vince is as soon, but he can speak for himself on that. So
no, probably 7.
Yeah, I'm just tired of writing contracts. It's so boring.
So, Valerie. So what's holding you back, and Janice, what's holding you back from starting that SEAL team?
I've been really stuck in the past year plus of developing consistent systems that generate consistent leads. I think I got to the root of what's going on, and I in terms of focus and concentration and organization. And so I'm trying some new personal life strategies to bring it back in. But I really just want to hit a level of consistency. I forgot which level it is in the Tom Ferry pyramid, but maybe it's level 3 or 4. 3. I'm not there. I'm still approaching. And I think once I'll know when I get there.
Actually, it's kind of 3 and 4. It's kind of combined, just to be honest with you.
And Janice, is that the same for you?
Yeah, I tend to get the system and then not follow it. So I'm trying to get the consistency and follow all the systems and ideas and thoughts and stuff and get everything structured in a way that I'm doing it consistently to keep the business consistent, to bring on those people to support me and keep it going. I don't want to, nobody wants to bring people on and then
shit the bed,
not have the business. Yeah. Very good term for it. Not be able to pay your people.
I'm going to make an argument, and yes, it is a double check to make sure it is level 3 is gain consistency. So I'm going to make an argument for 2 options to gain consistency to then kind of take yourself to the next level, which level 4 is delegate work, which actually they kind of work in tandem, because you need to get certain things off your plate. We talk about this all the time. As an agent, ideally, what are those high production parts of our job? It's making calls to generate leads, marketing to generate leads, doing follow-up calls, doing nurture, and going on appointments, writing offers, showing houses, all that stuff, right? Listing appointments. Everything else is not really big money-making portions. So there's where the argument is, and I've done it both ways. I've started things that when there was all agents and no support, and you kind of split up the support stuff. I think Vince and I are 2 agents right now, but we have technically we have 3 support people. We have transaction coordinator, assistant, and now an ISA. And it's helping us gain consistency, I think, for sure.
And I would say, being on our 12 o'clock Monday call here, this is our 1 o'clock here in Wisconsin for us. So Brad and I are on a 12 o'clock call also. And one of the things a lot of the big agents talked about, the first person they hired was an assistant, either a virtual assistant or in-house assistant, to develop that consistency. Or, let's say, I'll give a great example. Valerie just has this form that she now has in an iPad. Now, if she wanted to tweak that form, she would have to spend all weekend making adjustments to it, creating the folders, where if she had an assistant, she can give it to her assistant to create that form. And then free up her time to be more productive in the sense of when it comes to our clients. So, if you're thinking about doing, creating that team and starting to do that team, I would recommend, and if you don't want to hire a full assistant that's going to be with you 40 hours a week, use Upwork or Fiverr and, start delegating some of those tasks on a weekly basis. Like Brad and I do videos every week. I used to edit those videos, upload them, and man, they took a lot of my time. And Brad could vouch for this. I was grumpy after when stuff didn't work. It was such a headache. Now we record the video and I upload them, and then they're sent to me 2 days later, all tweaked and modified and looking pretty. And so it's freed up a lot of my time, not just for me, but now also to spend more time with my family, which is also important, for a lot of us, not just, family time, free time, whatever it might be. So if it means spending that little extra money on a weekly basis to hire someone through Upwork for $5 an hour to do a task for you, that's how I would say, that's how I'd suggest trying it first, and create those habits, and then realize, oh, okay, now I can start focusing on this part of my business, or adding this part of my, this task to my business. So to Brad's point, delegating our responsibilities so that we can be more hands-on with our clients, I think has more value than necessarily putting systems in place. Because Brad, love Brad to death, but he's the guy that will try to perfect. He'll try to make a blank piece of paper still blank all day long. He'll sit there and be like, it's not quite blank enough. And so he will try to perfect something until he's blue in the face and always change it, where you eventually just got to run with it and let your end users tell you if it's really working or not working or how it can be better, because we all have different ideas on what perfect it looks like. So that's my 2 cents to that on, doing that team and starting off and just jumping in and seeing what happens. What do you got to lose? You're going to piss off one person? We piss off more people than that in a week. I'm sure we do.
That's just my wife. Oh, kill me. He is right. Like, that's one thing that, and this is why it's good, which I'm not opposed. Like, instead of starting with, which I like the tip on the Fiverr thing. If you don't want to go full on assistant, just do a pay per use. And Fiverr's got people out there that pay per use. Vince has been using them even before we had somebody start helping with the marketing and the video editing. That was our first thing. He's like, I got to get this video editing on my plate. So he went Fiverr first. So he's got all the connections through Upwork and all that stuff and Fiverrs and all that. So reach out to him if you want any of that. But that's an excellent move. And then, the partner thing is really good to have that producing partner, because that was one of my worst traits, still is. I'm getting better at it, but it's still one of my worst traits is I tendency to want everything to be perfect before I do it. Well, now I'm actually getting good. Like, I'll tell clients, like, hey, this is new. So something comes across that's a little weird sounding. Sorry, it's not perfect yet. And they're like, oh, okay, thanks for letting me know. And before I would have freaked out about that. I'm like, oh, that was awful. Now I'm kind of getting a little looser. I'm like, I told him it wasn't perfect. It's a mistake. It happens. So I'm starting to loosen up a little bit with that shit, but not completely. So I'd say the biggest thing to get the consistency though is you're gonna have to delegate. So that delegate work is level 4. I would make an argument in Tom's world that you need to have a little bit of the delegation to be able to expand and grow. So that would be my challenge to everybody would be, if you really want to start these teams, figure out how you can start delegating some stuff off your plate. Janice has got something to say. No, you just sit there smiling.
No, I was taking a deep breath. No, I know. I need to delegate.
Oh yeah, that was not directly you, Janice, but yes, it happens to be you. That's funny. You took it so personally, and I wasn't even talking to you in that case. But yeah, you're actually right. You do. So
it's absolutely true. I know it's true. I'm just trying to figure out how to do it and survive it. And I still struggle with certain things, but it was one of my hardest things because it goes to that, like, Vince's horrible blank page analogy, but it was actually a good analogy. But that was one of the things that really I struggle with was no one's going to do this as good as I can do it. I'm like the textbook of this. Like, I'll just do it because it's not going to look the way I want it. It's not going to be put in the right place where I want it. Well, that's fine. That shit happens all the time. I just tell May, our assistant, like, hey, no, move this here and do that. So I'm just getting better. Still not perfect by any means. Sometimes I'm like, fuck this shit, I'll just do it myself. But it's baby steps.
Right. And Janice, for you, what I would say is take the task that you least like the most and the one that takes you the longest. So and I'm going to use video editing for me because I hated it the most and it took me the longest to do. That was the first thing I delegated out. And it didn't mean that when the video came back, I couldn't watch it and ask them to kind of make a change or tweak it. But like, I was like, holy cow, like that just saved me 3 hours a week, 4 hours a week of trying to edit, upload, all that good stuff. So I would say, we talked about this way back one on doing our calendars, write down all the tasks you do and the ones that you really dislike doing or take you the longest or you struggle with, those are the highlighted in red or pink, and you say, these are the first things I'm delegating, getting off my desk, because it's going to give me a sense of relief and accomplishment when someone else is knocking it out. And to Brad's point, if it's not perfect, you just let them know. You'd be like, hey, I'd really like it if this header up here was bold and maybe in a different color, if they're doing a form or something. I mean, they're very good about making changes and working with you. And if you do it pay per job, a lot of times they'll allow you to have 2 or 3 revisions in that cost. I like the pay per hour, because I feel like sometimes pay per job, we always overpay. So don't, if you think a job should cost $50, start with $10, because there's people out there that will do it for $10. Don't overpay. That's the biggest thing I could say, especially using Upwork and Fiverr. To give you guys an example, I've used this before, but in the Philippines, $20 will get them about a month's worth of food for a family of 4. So if that worker's in Philippines, they're really for $20, they're gonna work their ass off, and they'll probably do it in 2 hours or 4 hours for you at $5 an hour. But that's a lot of money in their pocket. So I made that mistake early on. I paid $50 for one video to get edited, and realized they had it done in an hour, and they just made a ton of money on me. So it was lesson learned. So hopefully you guys don't make that mistake. But
anything else? Because we got to wrap up. We are over, and we like keep it to an hour.
All right.
This is really good.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. And don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. Be sure to invite others to join. I'd like to continue to grow this group, and we'll see everyone next week.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
All right. Thanks.